to today's Culture Builders. 2 ways to get your team to be more blank. That blank is whatever you want your team to be more of. So today's Culture Builders is also an article at tocculture.com. If you want to see the text version, I know many people do prefer that. So let's get into it. What are 2 ways you can get your team to be more of blank, whatever that is? It's a question I get often, right, from coaches. How do I get my team to be more resilient, more selfless, more positive, more accountable? How to get my team to be better leaders? The answer is quite simple, but the work is not easy. All right, let me explain. So recently in a call with a coach I work with, we discussed the upcoming season. The stress was mounting for her, the long hours, a few poor player attitudes, a complaining parent, an unsupportive administrator, and a young, inexperienced team with a strong chance of a losing season. This isn't an uncommon situation, these factors. But who do you want your team to be and become through it all? Well, most of us would say resilient, positive, selfless, accountable, grateful. Those are all great things, right? What do you want them to experience through all that? Joy, care, growth in the process. It's easy to articulate answers to those questions. And it's become more and more common for teams to gather and craft mission and vision statements, core values, and team standards to answer those questions prior to a season. And yet from experience, we know that when the rubber meets the road, those values don't often hold up. Whether you win 3 games in a row or lose 3 games in a row, players can go negative. They can blame, complain, and make excuses. They start to focus more on themselves and fail to step up and lead. Team drama can come up. So what's the solution? Number 1, become more blank. Become more of what you want your team to become of. So if we want our team to become more resilient, we need to stay committed, confident, and consistent when we hit adversity. If we want our team to become more selfless, we need to see others' needs, challenges, and desires as legitimate as our own. If we want our team to become more accountable, we need to step into 100% responsibility for the circumstances we have created in our lives, as well as our own physical, emotional, and mental well-being. If we want our team to become more positive, we need to find something positive in every situation and assume positive intent in everyone we meet. If we want our team to become more grateful, we need to be grateful for the opportunity we get to coach them every day and thank our players and their parents for allowing us to coach them. If we want our team to become better leaders, we need to identify our blind spots and areas of growth and work at those every single day. In her book on parenting, Good Inside, a guide to become the sports parent you want to become, or become the parent you want to be, Dr. Becky Kennedy discusses how the research has established that oftentimes when kids are struggling, it is not therapy for the child, but coaching or therapy for the parent that leads to the most significant changes for the child. Well, it's the same for us as leaders. It's one thing to stand up in front of a room and talk about core values and slap them on a t-shirt or a wall. It's a totally different thing to become our core values. We complain our athletes aren't resilient, and yet we abandon our principles when we take a few hard losses. We complain our athletes are so negative, and yet we become negative about them. I don't think I need to go on with more examples. You get the idea and the irony, I hope. When discussing his pyramid of success, his core values, the legendary basketball coach John Wooden said, handouts and discussion were meaningless unless team members could see lots of evidence of the pyramid in my own behavior as a leader and a coach. Your own personal example is one of the most powerful leadership tools you possess. Put it to good use. Be what you want your team to become. We'll finish that point with that quote from John Wooden. Now we'll move on to the second thing, which is systematize your values. It's important to early on communicate your core values and co-create those values with your team, and then to define those values by getting clear on the behavioral standards on which to live those out. But doing this process, it usually fails to bring those values to life because leaders fail to make them an everyday thing. If you want to truly actualize your values, to give your team and those individuals a new identity, your core values have to be a thing every single day. Here are some ways you can start to make your core values an everyday thing. Say one of your core values is selflessness. When you start practice, you could ask your team to get into small groups and ask them to identify one behavior or intention they can have to be more selfless in that session. When you practice as a team, when a player does something selfless, you could blow the whistle, stop the team, and praise a player for demonstrating selflessness. When you finish practice as a team, you could ask players to shout out a teammate for a moment they demonstrated selflessness. When you watch film, you could be highlighting selfless plays and behaviors you see in the film. When you meet weekly as a team, you could choose selflessness or another core value to highlight and discuss, asking players to talk about it, what it means to them. When you send out a practice plan, email, text message, or any piece of communication, you could put your core values at the header of that communication. When you talk to your team, you could be intentional in talking less about how they are doing, they're performing, and talk more about who they are becoming, more selfless, or another core value. When you set a success criteria for a game, instead of just focusing on technical or tactical criteria, you could always have one that focuses on a core value like a selfless behavior or making the extra pass. When you do player reviews or recruiting, you could assess players not just on technical or tactical skills, but on how they demonstrate or fail to demonstrate your core value of selflessness. When you have any chance to share with your team, you could share stories of selflessness, share podcasts, YouTube videos, films, book chapters, and tell your own stories of players that have come before them who have demonstrated selflessness. Never stop talking about your values. If your players aren't making fun of you or tired of hearing you talk about those values, then you aren't doing it enough. Thanks for listening to today's Culture Builders. It's always a privilege to share with you. If you found this valuable, please share it with other coaches out there. Also, be sure to check out the Coaching Culture podcast if you want more conversations and dialogues on building team culture and growing as a leader.